Okay, welcome back to the Twits by Roald Dahl. And today we are going to start reading about Mrs. Twit. So make some predictions. What do you think she will be like? We found out what Mr. Twit was like, and the author had described him as a horrible man. So I'm wondering, what Mrs. Twit is like. So again, use those strategies, visualize, make connections, make predictions, have I wonders, so that you can be an active learner and keep the story going on in your head, right? It helps you remember the details about it because you're making the story more personal to you. Okay, so you might even say, wow, do I know anybody like Mr. Twit? Or what would it be like if I did know somebody like Mr. Twit, right? And so let's start to discover about Mrs. Twit. Oh, Mrs. Twit was no better than her husband. She did not, of course, have a hairy face. It was a pity she didn't, because that, at any rate, would have hidden some of her fearful ugliness. Take a look at her. Have you ever seen a woman with an uglier face than that? I doubt it. But the funny thing is that Mrs. Twit wasn't born ugly. She had quite a nice face when she was young. The ugliness had grown upon her year after year as she got older. Why would that happen? I tell you why. If a person has ugly thoughts, it begins to show in their face. And when that person has ugly thoughts every day, every week, every year, the face gets uglier and uglier until it gets so ugly you can barely look at it. A person who has good thoughts cannot ever be ugly. You can have a wonky nose and a crooked mouth and a double chin and stick out teeth, but if you have good thoughts, they will shine out of your face like sunbeams, and you will always look lovely. That's true. Have you ever met anyone that either A, you thought was so beautiful to, when you met them, or handsome, and then their personality, they were rude and maybe obnoxious and mean, and then you didn't see them the same way. They weren't attractive anymore. They weren't good looking anymore, right? They became ugly to you. And other people that maybe at first you didn't think were that magnificent, and then you got to know them, and they were so kind and lovely that they became the most gorgeous person that you know. That, I do believe I can make connections to that. Okay, so nothing shone out of Mrs. Twit's face. In her right hand, she carried a walking stick. She used to tell people that it was because she had warts growing on the soles of her left foot, and walking was painful. But the real reason she carried a stick was so that she could hit things with it. Things like dogs and cats and small children. And then there was the glass eye. Mrs. Twit had a glass eye that was always looking the other way. Yeah, someone with a stick that's mean. So next chapter, the glass eye. You can play lots of tricks with the glass eye because you can take it out and pop it back in again anytime you like. You can bet your life Mrs. Twit knew all the tricks. One morning, she took out her glass eye and dropped it into Mr. Twit's mug of beer when he wasn't looking. Mr. Twit sat there drinking the beer slowly. The froth made a white ring on the hairs around his mouth. He wiped the white froth on his sleeve and wiped his sleeve with his trousers. Whew, I'm telling you, this author has very good description because my tummy is turning with the grossness of this. You're plotting something, Mrs. Twit said, keeping her back turned so he wouldn't see what she was taking out her glass eye. Whenever you go all quiet like that, I know very well you're plotting something. Mrs. Twit was right. Mr. Twit was plodding away like mad. He was trying to think up a real nasty trick that he could play on his wife that day. You'd better be careful, Mrs. Twit said, because when I see you starting to plot, I watch you like a wombat. Oh, do shut up, you old hag, Mr. Twit said. He went on drinking his beer, and his evil mind kept working away on the latest horrid trick he was going to play on this old woman. Suddenly, As Mr. Twit tipped last drop of beer down his throat, he caught sight of Mrs. Twit's awful glass eye staring at him from the bottom of the mug. Ugh. It made him jump. "I told you I was watching you," cackled Mrs. Twit. "I've got eyes everywhere, so you better be careful." Ooh, how would you feel if you had a glass eye in the bottom of your drink? That's disgusting. I'm disgusted. Yuck. It's funny, but yuck. I'm so glad that I don't have friends like that play tricks on me like that. Okay, next chapter, The Frog. To pay her back for the glass eye in his beer, Mr. Twit decided he would put a frog in Mrs. Twit's bed. He caught he caught a big one down by the pond and carried it back secretly in his box. That night, when Mrs. Twit was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, Mr. Twit slipped the frog between her sheets. Then he got in his own bed and waited for the fun to begin. Mrs. Twit came back and climbed in her bed and put out the light. She lay there in the dock, scratching her tummy. Her tummy was itchy. Dirty old hags like her always had itchy tummies. Whew. Then all at once, she felt something cold and slimy crawling over her feet. She screamed. I would probably scream too. Would you scream? "What's the matter with you?" Mr. Twit said. "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit, bouncing about. "There's something in my bed." "Oh, I'll bet it's that giant skillywiggler I saw on the floor just now," Mr. Twit said. "The what?" screamed Mrs. Twit. "I tried to kill it, but it got away," Mr. Twit said. It got teeth like screwdrivers." Visualize that. "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "Save me! It's all over my feet." "Oh, it'll bite your toes off," said Mr. Twit. Mrs. Twit fainted. Mr. Twit got out of bed and fetched a jug of cold water. He poured the water over Mrs. Twit's head to retrieve her. The frog crawled up from under the sheets to get near the water. It started jumping about on the pillow. Frogs love water. This one was having a good time. See him right there? When Mrs. Twit came to, the frog had jumped on her face. This is not a nice thing to happen to anyone at bed at night. This is true. She screamed again. "By golly, it is a giant skillywiggler," Mr. Twit said. "It's going to bite your nose off." Oh, mercy. Mrs. Twit leaped out of bed and flew downstairs and spent the night on the sofa. The frog went to sleep on her pillow. The frog's happy. So, and that's true, when frogs are cute and harmless, but when you're not expecting them, right, and you're in bed, that could scare anybody. Mr. Twit, them too. All right, so that was Mrs. Twit, the Glass Eye, and the Frog. So we read 3 more chapters. Keep on reading, and I will see you for the next couple chapters shortly. I hope you're enjoying this.